Family member had an affair with his son's girlfriend. They had a baby. All right, let me start by saying, this whole thing has me questioning everything I thought I knew about my family. I've never been the type to get involved in drama, but this situation is unavoidable. It all kicked off when my grown child, let's call them kid, sat me down in the living room last week. The look on their face was somewhere between rage and panic, and I had no clue what I'd done to deserve that stare. Then kid blurts out, "Mom, do you want to sleep with my partner?" I almost choked on my tea. I swear if I had false teeth, they'd have flown out right there. I'm old, tired, and the only thing I fantasize about these days is a long nap or finding a quiet corner to knit in peace. I'm past the days of romance or even giving a damn about flirting. But kid looked dead serious. "Are you insane?" I snapped back, feeling my face go hot. "What on earth makes you think I'd even be interested in your partner? I'm too old for that mess." They didn't back down. "I saw the way you looked at them. You think I didn't notice?" Looked at them? How does a person even look at someone that makes their own child think that? I don't even know if I was more insulted or just baffled by the accusation. All I could manage to say was, "Kid, I've devoted my whole life to you. Why would you even think I'd betray you like that? This is ridiculous." Kid stormed off, slamming the door, leaving me with a sinking feeling in my gut that this wasn't over. A few days passed, and I was still fuming, running through every interaction I'd ever had with Kid's partner, trying to figure out what I'd done to make them think I'd crossed such a line. Then, my cousin, let's call them Creeper, invited me over for tea. Creeper had that smug half-smile they always have when they know something I don't. "So, how's everything at home?" Creeper asked, stirring their tea way too slowly, like they were savoring every second of my discomfort. I sighed, already on edge. "Terrible, actually. Kid thinks I'm out here trying to seduce their partner." Creeper didn't even blink, just sipped their tea like they were expecting it. Then, without missing a beat, they said, "Well, I guess it's better than them finding out I'm the one who actually slept with their partner." I nearly flipped the table. "What?" Creeper had this sick, twisted grin like they'd been waiting to see my reaction forever. "Yeah, it's true. We hooked up a while back. And the best part is there's a baby on the way." I was speechless. I felt like someone had just sucker-punched me straight in the gut. Not only had Creeper betrayed Kid in the worst possible way, but now they were bringing a child into this chaos? I couldn't even process it. "You absolute dirtbag," I muttered, my voice trembling. "How could you do that to your own family?" They shrugged, completely unfazed. "Hey, life happens. Kid wasn't treating them right, so I stepped in." I could barely keep it together as I left Creeper's place. My head was spinning. I knew I had to tell Kid, but how do you even start to unravel a mess like this? I decided that Kid needed to know the truth, even if it was going to shatter their world. The next morning, I found them at the kitchen table, looking more fragile than I'd ever seen them. I took a deep breath. "Kid, we need to talk. It's about your partner." They cut me off, voice shaking. I know. I've been losing my mind thinking you're into them. It's been driving me crazy." "That's not it," I said, and I felt my throat tighten. "Kid, it wasn't me. It was Creeper. They're the one who had the affair, and they're having a baby with your partner." Silence. Just this hollow, deafening silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Kid's face went white, then red, then crumpled like they'd been physically struck. "You're lying," they said, voice barely a whisper, trembling with rage and pain. "Please tell me you're lying." I couldn't even look them in the eye. "I'm so sorry, Kid. I wish I was." They screamed, a sound I'll never forget, like their soul was being ripped out. And then they were gone, storming out of the house, leaving me to wonder if our family would ever recover from this betrayal. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Kid cut off all contact with everyone in the family. They packed up, moved out of state, and refused to take anyone's calls. I got texts from relatives left and right, demanding to know what the hell happened. Creeper, on the other hand, acted like nothing had changed. They even threw a baby shower like this whole situation was normal. It made me sick to see them play the victim, acting like they hadn't just torn our family apart for their own selfish reasons. I reached out to Kid again and again, but all I got was radio silence. Friends and family tried to intervene, but it was clear that Kid needed space to process this nightmare. Creeper's partner kept quiet too. Didn't say a word to anyone about the affair, just kept their head down like they were hoping the ground would swallow them up. The worst part? There were rumors now, family whispering that maybe Creeper wasn't the only one involved, that there were others too. The whole situation was toxic. Months passed, and I thought the dust might finally settle. But I was wrong. One night, Kid showed up at my doorstep. They looked different, harder, colder, like they'd aged 10 years in a few months. Without a word, they shoved a letter into my hands. It was from Creeper's partner, confessing that the baby wasn't even Creeper's. It was someone else's entirely. They'd used Creeper as a cover because they knew Kid's anger would be easier to direct at family than at the truth. Kid looked at me with eyes that were hollow and broken. "What did I do to deserve this?" they asked, voice cracking. "What the hell is wrong with people?" I had no answers. All I could do was hold them as they fell apart, realizing that the lies had gone even deeper than we thought. Our family was shattered, and there was no way to put it back together. Update. Kid's been staying with me for a while now, and they're talking about cutting off Creeper for good. They said, "I can't keep pretending like this family means anything when they'd stab me in the back like that." I don't blame them. Sometimes blood isn't thicker than betrayal. Creeper's still playing the victim card to anyone who'll listen, saying they were used and didn't mean to hurt Kid. I've told everyone I'm done with Creeper. You don't just come back from something like this. There's no forgiveness left in me. Turns out, Creeper's partner finally had a meltdown and spilled everything. They admitted to cheating on Kid, on Creeper, on basically everyone. They said they never meant for any of this to happen, that they were lost and confused. All I heard was excuses. Kid deserves so much better than these lying, manipulative people. Kid's trying to rebuild now, starting fresh somewhere far away from all of this. We still talk, and I promised them I'd always have their back. But honestly, I don't know if our family will ever be the same. The trust is gone, and I don't think it's coming back. This whole mess has left me exhausted. I'm too old for these games, too tired to deal with the wreckage Creeper caused. I thought family was supposed to be about love and support, but I'm starting to think that's just a fairy tale. Sometimes, the people you're supposed to trust the most are the ones who break you, and I'm done giving my heart to people who'll just trample on it. Kid's the only thing I care about now, and I'll be damned if I let anyone hurt them again. As for Creeper, they're out of my life for good. Some lines you just don't cross, and they crossed every one. Smoke filled the building while I was in the break room. I was sitting in the break room, staring at the crusty vending machine that was always out of my favorite snacks. It was a pretty average day, except for the fact that my head was pounding from dealing with entitled customers all morning. Two of my coworkers, who I'll call J and L, walked in and grabbed their lunches, looking just as drained as I felt. "Man, this place sucks the life out of me," Jay said, flopping down on the plastic chair that creaked every time he moved. "Tell me about it." "My soul dies a little more with every, 'Can I speak to your manager?'" Elle replied, rolling her eyes and ripping open a packet of instant noodles like it owed her money. Then, just before I was about to clock back in, another coworker, K, stumbles in with his phone glued to his ear. He was pale and sweating bullets. "Wait, what? Say that again," K said into the phone, his voice shaky. We all turned to him, confused as hell. K looked at us, his face twisted with panic. "Where are you? What do you mean the building's filling with smoke?" That's when everything flipped. We all froze for a second, just staring at each other like idiots. Then the smell hit us. Smoke, like burning plastic and something way worse. You could feel it creeping under the door. Jay shot up from his seat, nearly tripping over the chair. "What the fuck? We need to get out, now!" Jay yelled, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "Hold on! Hold on!" Elle shouted, her hands shaking as she grabbed her purse off the table. I ran to my locker, yanked it open, and grabbed my own stuff. The smoke was coming from the men's section, thick, black plumes pouring out and swallowing everything in its path. It wasn't just one source, it was everywhere. I couldn't tell if it was a fire or something else entirely. "Don't breathe that shit in," Kay yelled, grabbing Elle's arm and practically dragging her towards the exit. We all bolted, dodging around shelves and mannequins like we were in some twisted game of obstacle course tag. The entire store was a mess of shouting and confused faces. We burst out into the parking lot gasping for air. My lungs were burning and I couldn't stop coughing. We stood there like a bunch of stunned idiots, staring at the building while smoke billowed out from every crack and crevice. "Why the hell didn't the fire alarms go off?" Jay asked, his face red with rage and fear. "I don't know, man. This is some serious bullshit," Elle muttered, hands on her knees, trying to catch her breath. The manager finally came outside, waving his hands like that was going to fix anything. "All right, everyone just stay calm," he shouted. "We're closing the store for the day. Grab your stuff if you can, but don't go back inside." "I'm not going back in there. Are you insane?" Kay snapped, looking at the manager like he had just grown a second head. The four of us just stood there, staring at the mess, as the reality of how close we were to getting hurt set in. People were coughing, swearing, and some folks even looked like they were about to faint. The chaos didn't match the manager's weak attempts at keeping order. It was like watching someone try to put out a forest fire with a garden hose. As the minutes dragged on, the smoke finally began to clear. But something wasn't sitting right with any of us. The way the smoke spread didn't seem like a normal fire. It was too fast, too deliberate, almost like someone had set off a smoke bomb. "There's no way that was just an accident," Jay muttered under his breath. "No alarms, no sprinklers, nothing went off. This feels planned." "You think someone did this on purpose?" Elle asked, her eyes wide with shock. "I don't know," Kay said, running a hand through his hair. "All I know is that I'm not stepping foot back in that place until I know it's safe." The managers told us to go home, and I was out of there in 2 minutes flat. But the whole time I was driving, my mind was racing, trying to figure out what the hell just happened back there. 2 days later, I'm still waiting for my next shift to find out what really happened. I haven't heard anything official from the store, and it's driving me insane. My sister went to the store yesterday and told me it was open like nothing ever happened. Business as usual. "No smoke damage, nothing?" I asked her over the phone. "Nothing," she said. "It's like it never even happened." So here I am, left with more questions than answers. Was it a fire? A smoke bomb? Some messed up prank gone wrong? I don't know, and the not knowing is eating me alive. Update. Alright, so I finally had my next shift, and guess what? Nobody is talking about it. It's like the whole smoke thing never happened. I tried asking the manager straight up, but he just gave me some canned response about maintenance issues and brushed me off. But here's the thing. Jay heard from one of the overnight stalkers that there were weird guys in suits snooping around the store after we left. They were checking the vents and making notes on clipboards. Real official looking. "What the hell is going on?" Elle asked, her voice barely hiding her frustration. "I don't know, but I'm not buying the maintenance excuse," Jay said, crossing his arms. "This feels bigger than they're letting on." Today, I overheard Kay talking to another coworker, and they're saying the smoke might have been a cover-up. Something about a shipment that went missing from the stockroom a week ago, expensive electronics that never made it to the sales floor. "You think they set off the smoke to hide a robbery?" I asked, my voice louder than I meant it to be. "Maybe," Kay said, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "Or maybe it's something worse." At this point, I'm not sure if we're all just paranoid or if there's really something shady going on. Either way, I've got a bad feeling that we're not getting the whole story. Last night, Jay texted me out of nowhere. He said he got a call from a blocked number, and the voice on the other end just said, "Stay quiet if you know what's good for you." Then they hung up. "What the hell does that mean?" I texted back, my fingers trembling. It means we're in deep shit, Jay replied. Someone doesn't want us talking. Now I don't know if we're dealing with a fire, a robbery, or something way more dangerous. All I know is that this whole thing stinks, and I'm not going to let it go until we get some answers. So that's where I'm at, Reddit. If anyone's got advice or has been through something similar, let me know. This smoke-filled mystery is way bigger than we ever thought. TLDR. Smoke filled the building while I was on break. No alarms went off, and now it seems like something shady is happening at work. Set my boundaries and she broke it off. Alright, so here's the deal. I had this friends with benefits situation going on with this girl for a few months. It started casually, as it always does, with no strings attached. We'd hook up occasionally, grab a drink here and there, but no commitment. The usual. At first it was perfect, or so I thought. But as things progressed, I started noticing little things that bugged me. She'd hit me up at random times, mostly late at night, and only when she was drunk. You know, those, "Hey, you up?" texts that only meant one thing. She wouldn't even bother trying to hang out during the day or do anything a regular friend would do. One night, she called me at like 2 a.m., drunk as hell, slurring her words. I tried making plans earlier that week to grab coffee, but she blew me off with some half-assed excuse about being too busy. Yet here she was, drunk, expecting me to come over like I'm on standby for her whenever she felt like it. I went along with it a couple of times, but it started pissing me off. I mean, this was supposed to be a friends with benefits situation, not just benefits whenever she needed it. So I brought it up one night after she called again at some ungodly hour. I was firm but calm about it. I told her, "Look, if we're going to keep this thing going, we need to actually be friends, not just people who hook up. I'm not just your backup plan for when you're bored or drunk. That's not cool." Her response? She said she didn't have the bandwidth for a friendship right now. What the hell does that even mean? Like, what are we doing here? I was confused, frustrated, and a little hurt, but I decided to let it slide for the night. I figured maybe she was just having an off day. But this is where things really start to unravel. The next day, after sobering up, she texted me a casual, "Hey, how are you?" like nothing happened the night before. I took a few hours to respond because, honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to even engage in this anymore. I eventually replied and told her I wanted to have a serious conversation about how things were going. She agreed, and we met up in person for the first time in what felt like weeks, outside of hooking up, of course. We went to this little dive bar, sat in a corner booth, and I laid it all out. I can't keep doing this if it's just going to be one-sided. I need some actual effort on your part. If we're going to be friends with benefits, then be an actual friend too. Otherwise, this isn't working for me. She looked at me, took a sip of her drink, and said something I'll never forget. "I just don't see why it has to be this complicated. We're both getting what we want, right?" At that moment, I realized we weren't on the same page. I wasn't just looking for the physical stuff anymore. Sure, that's how it started, but I liked her. And it wasn't just about sex for me anymore, but clearly, it was for her. So I told her, straight up, "Look, I'm setting boundaries here. If you want to keep this going, you need to actually start acting like a friend. Otherwise, we're done." Her face changed. She didn't like that at all. She got defensive and said, "If you want more, just say that. But I can't give that to you right now." I said, "It's not about wanting more in that way. I just want some respect. You only hit me up when you're wasted, and I feel like shit because I've been there for you, but you don't even acknowledge me unless you need something." She rolled her eyes. "I don't have time for this," she muttered, grabbing her stuff and walking out of the bar without another word. I just sat there for a while, staring at my drink, wondering how the hell I let myself get into this mess. After she stormed out, I didn't hear from her for a few days. No calls, no texts. Honestly, I wasn't surprised, but I was pissed. I had put myself out there, and instead of working through it, she bailed like a coward. The next week, I reached out one more time, just to see where her head was at. She replied with a one-liner, "I think we should stop seeing each other. I'm not in a place to deal with this right now. Wow. All right. I knew it was coming, but it still stung. I wasn't expecting a grand gesture or anything, but the coldness in that text hit different. No apology, no effort to even have a real conversation about it. Just done. I didn't respond. What was the point? I deleted her number and tried to move on, but it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had put into this situation, emotionally and mentally, and she couldn't even give me the bare minimum. At that point, I felt like an absolute idiot. I had fallen for her, and she couldn't have cared less. Weeks passed, and I started getting back into the dating scene. Met a couple of people here and there, but nothing serious. Every once in a while, I'd get drunk and think about texting her, but I never did. I was done being her backup plan, her safety net. Then, out of nowhere, she showed up at a mutual friend's party. I hadn't seen her in months, and of course, she was there, looking like nothing had ever happened between us. She gave me this little wave from across the room, and I just nodded, keeping my distance. A few drinks in, she walked up to me, acting all casual. "Hey, how have you been?" she asked, like she didn't blow me off completely the last time we talked. "I've been all right," I said, keeping it short. I wasn't about to get dragged back into her bullshit. She went on about how she had been so busy and didn't have the mental space for anything serious. I didn't even ask her. She was just rambling, trying to justify her actions, I guess. Finally, I cut her off. "Look, it's fine. We're good. But don't act like what you did was cool. You ghosted me and it sucked. I don't need your excuses." She looked surprised, like she wasn't expecting me to call her out. "I didn't ghost you," she argued. "I told you I couldn't handle it." "Same difference," I snapped. "You didn't even try to talk it out, you just bailed." She got quiet for a second, then shrugged. "I don't know what you want me to say." "Nothing," I said, finishing my drink and walking away. "I'm done." After that party, I thought I was free of her for good. But nope, she hit me up again. This time, sober. She wanted to talk, meet up, clear the air. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a park near my place, and I could tell right away this wasn't going to go well. She seemed nervous, fidgety, like she didn't know how to start. "So, I've been thinking," she began, "about what you said. I want to try being friends again. Like, really try." I almost laughed. After all this time, now she wanted to be friends? "I don't think that's a good idea," I replied. "I've moved on." She looked hurt, but I didn't care anymore. "I thought you wanted this," she said, confused. "Yeah, months ago," I shot back. "But I'm not here to be your emotional punching bag. You treated me like shit, and I let you. That's on me. But I'm not doing it again." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I get it," she whispered. "I'm sorry." It didn't feel like enough, but I just nodded back and walked away. This time, for real. Update. It's been a few months since everything went down, and honestly, I feel like I dodged a bullet. I've heard from mutual friends that she's still doing the same thing to other guys, and I'm just glad I got out when I did. It wasn't easy, though. For a while, I kept questioning myself, wondering if I had overreacted or expected too much. But after talking to some close friends and thinking it over, I realized that I wasn't asking for anything unreasonable. I just wanted some respect and a little effort. Apparently, that was too much for her. Anyway, I'm seeing someone new now, and things are going great. She's kind, respectful, and most importantly, she actually wants to spend time with me outside of just hooking up. It's refreshing, to say the least. Looking back, I feel like that whole situation with the friends with benefits girl was a learning experience. I learned to set boundaries, and more importantly, to walk away when those boundaries aren't respected. So, funny thing happened a couple of weeks ago. I ran into her again at another party. This time, I didn't even acknowledge her. She tried to come over and say hi, but I wasn't interested. I've moved on, and there's no point in going back to that toxic cycle. After the party, she texted me, saying she missed what we had and wanted to catch up sometime. I didn't even bother responding. It feels good to finally be in control of my own happiness and not let someone else dictate how I feel. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that you can't make someone respect your boundaries, but you can sure as hell enforce them. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. Did your parents blame you for not knowing things you were never taught? I've always been blamed for being a mess, disorganized as hell. My room? A disaster. My paperwork? Scattered all over. It wasn't until I hit middle age that I realized something crucial. No one ever taught me how to be organized. I mean, sure, I'm an adult now, but damn, how did I get to this point? A few weeks ago, I was sitting in a mountain of medical records trying to figure out which ones I actually needed to keep. It was such a simple thing. Yet, my brain just stopped. Completely overwhelmed, I ended up staring at those papers like they were written in some alien language. My parents always blamed me for not having my shit together. Why don't you have this sorted? Or, how can you lose something so important? Those words echoed in my head constantly. Why? Because no one showed me how. It clicked. My parents never gave me a damn thing. Not once did they sit me down and say, "Hey, here's how you manage your life." They never even bothered to hand me my medical records. I didn't even know what was in them until I was knee-deep in the mess trying to figure out how to make sense of it all. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't stupid. I was just unprepared. And that anger simmered inside me for days. That weekend, I went over to my parents' house. It was long overdue. I walked in, trying to keep my cool, but the moment I saw them sitting there, watching their dumb TV shows like everything was fine, something snapped. "Why didn't you ever teach me anything?" I blurted out. My dad looked at me like I was speaking another language, while my mom shot me this confused glance like she couldn't believe I had the audacity to ask. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice dripping with that classic passive-aggressive tone. I sat down, trying to explain. I told them how I struggled with basic adult tasks, things they always assumed I'd just figure out on my own. Paperwork, bills, medical records, hell, even keeping the house organized. My dad snorted. "You're an adult now. You should know how to handle that stuff." That's when I lost it. How the hell was I supposed to know? Did you ever teach me? Did you ever show me how to organize shit? No. You just expected me to magically get my life together. My mom stayed silent. She always does when the conversation gets too uncomfortable. My dad, on the other hand, wouldn't back down. "You're old enough to figure it out. You've been living on your own for years now. You can't keep blaming us for everything," he barked back. I stood up, my fists clenched, trying not to scream. "Yeah, I'm old enough now. But you were supposed to teach me back then. I didn't just wake up one day knowing how to deal with all this adult crap." I stormed out. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I didn't know what to do. I got in my car, sat there, and just sat. The anger was still boiling inside me, but under that was something even worse. Hurt. I wasn't expecting an apology. My parents don't do apologies. They'd rather argue than admit they screwed up, even when it's painfully obvious. But I guess I was hoping for something. A shred of acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, they could have done better. But nope. All I got was the same old, "You're an adult, figure it out" bullshit. And here I was, middle-aged, trying to fix all the broken pieces they never showed me how to handle. It took a while for me to cool down. Weeks, really. I didn't talk to them much after that. Every time I thought about it, that mix of anger and sadness just sat there, gnawing at me. I'd been carrying this weight for years, and I didn't even know it until now. After some time, I decided to sit down and sort through my life, one painful piece at a time. I tackled the medical records again, but this time, I forced myself to figure out a system. It wasn't easy, but I did it. Slowly. Painfully. And I realized something important. It wasn't just about the paperwork. My entire life, I'd been playing catch-up, trying to fix things that should have been second nature, things that most people are taught growing up. It wasn't just about keeping my papers in order. It was about everything. Managing my money, keeping a clean house, maintaining relationships. It was all connected, and I was drowning in it because no one ever gave me the tools to swim. And it's not like I could turn back time. But damn, I wished someone had sat me down as a kid and taught me the basics. A few days ago, I went back to my parents' house. We hadn't really spoken since the big blow-up, but I had to get some closure. As much as I wanted to cut them out of my life completely, I couldn't. They were still my parents, for better or worse. I walked in, and it was quiet. No TV this time. My dad was in the kitchen, and my mom was sitting at the table, flipping through a magazine. I sat down across from her, and for a long moment, we didn't say a word. Finally, she broke the silence. "We didn't know how," she whispered, not looking up from her magazine. "We didn't know how to teach you." I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting anything, really. But hearing her say those words, it hit me like a ton of bricks. They didn't know. They were as lost as I was. "Why didn't you just ask for help?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant it to be. She shrugged. "We didn't know we needed to." My dad came in, sitting down with his coffee. He didn't say anything, but for once, there wasn't that judgmental look in his eyes. Just acceptance, maybe. I don't know. We sat there for a while, not talking, just being. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Update. It's been a couple of months since that conversation, and things are better, I guess. My parents and I aren't exactly close, but we're talking again. And that's something. I've started taking control of my life, one small step at a time. I've learned how to organize my paperwork, manage my finances, and keep my house in order. It's not easy, but I'm doing it. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm actually in control of my life. It's not perfect. It never will be. But at least now, I'm not just blaming myself for things I was never taught. My relationship with my parents is still rocky. There are days when I can't even look at them without feeling that old resentment bubbling up. But there are also days when we sit down and talk like normal people. It's weird, and it's not something I'm used to, but I'm learning to accept that they're human too. They screwed up. I screwed up. But we're all trying to do better. I guess that's all I can ask for. My ex pretended to be her own brother. I was 17, naive, and probably way too trusting for my own good. I met my ex on Twitter. We'll call her X, original, right? She was 15 at the time, and we hit it off real quick. I mean, the connection was insane from the start. She was witty, funny, and had this quirky charm that I just fell for. We started DMing, and in no time we were together, as much as you can be when you've never met the person. Now, mind you, this was one of those intense online relationships. You know, the type where you share every detail of your life and you feel like you know them better than anyone, even though you've never met face to face. Yeah, that was us. But here's the thing. Less than a year into our relationship, I get a DM from a guy who claimed to be her brother. Let's call him Jack. Jack was all polite and friendly, introducing himself and saying he wanted to get to know me since I was dating his sister. Cool, right? I mean, I didn't think much of it. Free friend? Why not? Jack was weirdly normal. I expected maybe some protective brother energy, but he never even hinted at anything like that. No flirting, no weird vibes, just normal. I chalked it up to him being a chill guy. The thing that kind of threw me off, though, was how similar he and X talked. Same slang, same mannerisms. At the time, I just thought, guess that's just how siblings are, right? Spoiler alert, wrong. So, Jack and I kept chatting. It was mostly small talk, nothing deep, but something felt off. Jack never sent many photos, like, ever. And when he did, It was this one picture. It looked like it was pulled straight from someone's Snapchat. Not a single other picture followed after that. Now, I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed back then, but even I started thinking, okay, this is a little weird. I remember one night vividly. Jack had asked me to draw something for him. Yeah, he knew I was into art, and he was all, "Hey, could you draw me a pic?" So I did. I spent hours on that damn drawing, trying to make it perfect, sent it to him, and almost immediately, X DMs me in a panic. She says, "Jack attempted suicide. We're never going to speak to him again. He's gone." I didn't even know how to respond. My brain just stopped. I didn't even get the chance to question it. She was so emotional, crying over it, saying how much it hurt her. And I played the role, comforted her, reassured her. Meanwhile, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, what the actual hell just happened? After Jack's death, X was a wreck. Or at least, she acted like one. Crying all the time, saying she missed him, that her family was devastated. I felt trapped in this emotional black hole. I was trying to be the supportive partner, but the whole thing stank to high heaven. I didn't even get to say goodbye to Jack. It was like he vanished in an instant. Weeks passed. Things between me and X got weird. She'd bring Jack up constantly, like she was keeping his memory alive. It was starting to feel obsessive. I remember thinking, is this how people normally grieve? Or am I missing something? But here's the thing. I couldn't shake the similarities between them. It was like I was talking to the same person. Jack never sent voice messages. X's stories about him were always vague. And the whole "he's dead now" thing? It felt like a cover for something. But I pushed those thoughts aside. I mean, why would someone lie about their brother being dead? Years passed. Yeah, years. I stayed with her through all the ups and downs, thinking I was in some tragic love story. Jack never came up again, and I let myself forget. But one random night, I was scrolling through old DMs, and I saw something that made me stop. It was a message from Jack, one I had forgotten about. And in it, he used this specific phrase that only X used. I mean, it wasn't something anyone else would say. I sat there staring at the screen, piecing everything together in real time. The way they talked, the way they acted. It hit me like a truck. Jack wasn't real. He never was. It was all X. The whole time. She pretended to be her own brother. I couldn't breathe. The sheer level of manipulation that went into this. I felt sick. She faked an entire person, faked his death, and played the grieving sister for years. And I had fallen for all of it. I confronted her. I remember it so clearly, even though I was shaking the entire time. I asked her outright, was Jack even real? She froze. She knew. I could see it in her face. And then she broke down, crying, saying how sorry she was, how she never meant for it to go so far. She started with, "I just wanted to see if you'd stay loyal." And then it spiraled out of control. I couldn't even look at her. The betrayal was so deep. It wasn't just the fake brother. It was the manipulation, the lies, the emotional damage she'd caused for years. I told her I couldn't do it anymore. We were done. And that was it. 5 years of my life wasted on someone who pretended to be her own damn brother. Update. I spent months after the breakup trying to piece together my life. I was 21 by then, and I felt like I'd been played like a puppet for years. It was hard to trust anyone after that. I started questioning everything about our relationship, every interaction. How much of it was real? How much was just another one of her lies? I found out later through mutual friends that she never told anyone about Jack. It was like this secret she kept just for me, which made it even worse, because it meant she knew how messed up it was, and she still did it. I've dated since then, but honestly, I have some serious trust issues now. I mean, how do you get past something like that? How do you ever trust someone again after they've pretended to be their own sibling? About a year after we broke up, She reached out to me. She wanted to apologize again, but I shut it down. I told her I didn't need her apology. I didn't want it. What I needed was to move on, and I couldn't do that if she kept popping back into my life. She cried, again, but I didn't care this time. I blocked her on everything, and I haven't heard from her since. Honestly, that's probably the best thing that's come out of all of this. But yeah, that's the story of how my ex pretended to be her own brother. If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking around. And if you ever get a weird feeling about someone, trust your gut. I wish I had. TLDR. My ex pretended to be her own brother, faked his death, and manipulated me for years. Only found out after 5 years of being together. Crazy ex breakup story. This isn't the kind of story I'd ever imagined writing. But here we are. It's New Year's Eve, and I was pumped for a fresh start. I had this big job coming up in a few days and wanted to stay chill, you know? Just hang out with some friends, grab a couple of drinks, and call it an early night. But my ex, let's call her A, had other plans. She wanted to hit up some house party at 2 a.m. Now, I'm not the party until dawn type, especially not when I'm trying to focus on my career. I told her that for about a week. Literally every day leading up to New Year's Eve, I kept saying, "Nah, I'm gonna skip it. Gotta rest up." So, we're out with 2 other couples. Everyone's having a good time, right? Then A starts drinking heavily, like way more than everyone else. At around 1:30 a.m., she starts pushing the idea of this house party again. "No way, I'm not going," I say calmly, trying to keep it cool. I've learned over the course of our year together that A can go from 0 to 100 real quick, so I was already prepared for some backlash. But I didn't expect this. "Are you fucking serious? You're such a fucking buzzkill," she snaps, loud enough for people on the street to turn and look. I try pulling her aside, hoping to avoid a full-blown scene. My friends are awkwardly staring at their drinks, pretending not to notice the brewing storm. "Look, we've talked about this. I'm tired, and I need to prep for the job. I'm not going to some random house party," I repeat, keeping my voice low. But she doesn't care. "You're a fucking loser. Why the fuck did I even agree to date someone who's so fucking boring?" She screams, right in the middle of the street, her face flushed with rage and alcohol. People are starting to actually stop and stare now. I'm trying to de-escalate, you know? Like calm her down, get her to stop screaming at me in public. But she's having none of it. Every time I try to speak, she cuts me off, hurling insults like, "You're worse than my ex," and "fuck off," which she must have repeated about 100 times. I finally just walk away. I'm done being humiliated in front of strangers. As I'm leaving, she keeps shouting at me, "You'll regret this. Just fucking wait. I'll ruin your life." After about 15 minutes of walking, I'm back home, and I feel like I can finally breathe. I should have known better than to think the night was over, though. My phone starts blowing up. Missed calls, texts, all from A, threatening to ruin my life if I didn't answer. Saying that I was worse than her abusive ex, and that he would never have left her alone like that. The irony? I was leaving her alone because she told me to. So, I do the smart thing and put my phone on airplane mode. I'm not dealing with this shit. But when I finally turn it back on after an hour or so, I get hit with a ton of texts that make my stomach turn. "If you don't call me right now, I'll jump off a fucking bridge." And she wasn't kidding. Or, at least she wanted me to believe she wasn't. I call her, panicked, and she's screaming more abuse at me. She's going off about how I left her in the city center, drunk and helpless. Which is total bullshit because public transport in our city runs all night, for free, and she knows it. Then she drops this. "I hope I get raped or killed tonight, and it'll be your fault." I don't even know what to say to that. My brain is short-circuiting. I try to reason with her, tell her to just get on a bus or a train, but she's claiming that nothing's running. Then she sends me a text that she's in some random guy's car and that he's feeling her leg. She goes silent for 10 minutes after that. I'm freaking out. Calling her repeatedly, no answer. Then, out of nowhere, she calls me back, acting like nothing happened. Laughs about it even, like the whole thing was a fucking joke. I'm sitting there, sweating, and she's going on about how I'm overreacting. Then the abuse starts again. At this point, I can't take it anymore. I call her mom, who I've always gotten along with, and explain everything. She tells me she'll track A using Find My Friends and make sure she's okay. A's mom eventually finds her, drunk at some house party, laughing it up with friends. The next day, I tell A we're done. I can't keep doing this. I can't be with someone who's this toxic. I expected her to take it hard, but she's acting like I'm the one who's in the wrong. "You're overreacting," she says. "It was just one bad night." I explain, for the millionth time, that it's not just one night. It's a pattern. The verbal abuse, the manipulation, the constant lying. But she doesn't get it, or pretends not to. "You're just trying to make me feel guilty," she accuses me, flipping the script. Classic. I ask for space. Politely, at first, then firmly. Over the next few days, I must have asked for space at least 1,000 times. But she won't leave me alone. She keeps texting, calling, threatening to show up at my place or work. Finally, I have to block her, and her mom, just to get some peace. Blocking A should have been the end of it, right? Wrong. She starts pulling these weird, almost petty stunts to get my attention, like creating a new account on Depop using her first name and my last name. Liking all my posts on social media, even though I've gone private. I hear through mutual friends, who by the way I've barely spoken to about what happened out of respect for her, that she's spreading rumors about me. Crazy shit about how I was abusive and manipulative. Meanwhile, I haven't said a word about her. Then, the final straw, my best friend, who tragically passed away a few months ago, was having a memorial service. I didn't invite her because they weren't close, and frankly, I didn't want the drama. She finds out about it and turns it into a thing. "You didn't invite me because you're trying to humiliate me," she screams in a series of voice messages. "You're doing this on purpose to manipulate me." She even posts about it indirectly on Instagram, making it seem like I'm some kind of heartless monster. At this point, I'm considering a restraining order. A has proven time and time again that she's not going to stop until she gets what she wants. And what she wants is my attention. I stopped responding to her texts and calls weeks ago. I figured if I gave her nothing, she'd eventually get bored and move on. But she's only doubled down, trying new ways to get under my skin. It's exhausting. Mentally, emotionally. I just want to move on with my life. But she won't let me. Update. It's been about 3 months since I cut off all contact with A. She still finds ways to show up in my life, though. Random friend requests on Facebook, new accounts liking my posts. I've even had a few friends tell me she's been asking about me at parties. The most disturbing thing, though? She showed up at my job one morning. I work early, like 7 a.m., and there she was, sitting outside the building when I arrived. She didn't say anything, just stared at me as I walked inside. I don't know what her endgame is, but I'm done playing her games. If this keeps up, I'm going to have to take legal action. I've already started documenting everything, just in case. Alright, last update. This just happened yesterday, and I'm still shaken up about it. I'm walking home from work, and who do I see waiting outside my building? A. I haven't seen her in person since the morning she showed up at my job, and I had honestly hoped she'd moved on. But there she is, standing in front of my building with this weird, manic smile on her face. I don't say a word, just walk past her, but she follows me inside. "Can we talk?" she asks, her voice way too calm for someone who's been harassing me for months. "No," I say bluntly. "We're done. I don't want to see you anymore." But she doesn't leave. Instead, she leans in close and whispers, "This isn't over." I freeze for a second. That "this isn't over" sent chills down my spine, but I'm done giving her reactions. I walk away, ignoring her completely, and head up to my apartment. I lock the door behind me and stand there for a minute, listening to see if she followed me up the stairs. Nothing. Dead silence. I think it's over, at least for the night, but I'm wrong. About half an hour later, there's a knock at my door. I don't answer it at first, hoping whoever it is will just go away. Then I hear her voice. "OP, open the fucking door!" I don't even respond. I'm not about to let her in, not with the way she's been acting. The knocking turns into banging, and I hear her shouting through the door. "I swear to God, if you don't open this door, I'll—" I yank the door open before she can finish her sentence, and there she is, standing there with this deranged look in her eyes. She looks worse than the last time I saw her, like she hasn't slept in days. Her hair's a mess, her makeup is smeared, and she reeks of alcohol. "What do you want, eh?" I ask, trying to stay calm, but I'm shaking inside. I've dealt with a lot of her shit, but this feels different. This feels dangerous. "I just want to talk," she slurs, leaning against the doorframe. "Why won't you talk to me? Why are you doing this to me?" I tell her again that we're done, that there's nothing left to say. But she keeps going, her voice getting louder and more hysterical. "You're a piece of shit. You know that? You're the worst fucking person I've ever met. I gave you everything, and you threw it all away. You ruined my life." I don't even know how to respond to that. I'm standing there, stunned, as she continues to unload on me, calling me every name in the book. Then she starts crying. Big, ugly, sobbing tears. "You're just going to let me stand here and cry?" she says, her voice breaking. "You don't even care." At this point, I'm at a loss. She's clearly not leaving until she gets a reaction, but I don't want to give her one. So, I just stand there, staring at her, waiting for her to stop. That's when she lunges at me. I didn't see it coming. 1 minute she's crying, and the next, she's trying to shove her way into my apartment. I push her back, trying not to hurt her, but she's stronger than she looks. She's screaming at me, clawing at my arms, trying to get inside. "Let me in! Let me fucking in!" I manage to push her out into the hallway and slam the door shut. I lock it and back away, my heart pounding in my chest. She's banging on the door again, but I don't open it this time. I don't even respond. I call the cops. So, after that night, I had to get the police involved. I didn't want to, but she left me no choice. When the cops arrived, she was still outside my door, sitting on the floor, sobbing. They asked me if I wanted to press charges, but honestly, I just wanted her out of my life. They escorted her out of the building, and I haven't heard from her since. I'm hoping that this is finally the end of it. I've blocked her on every platform, told my friends and family to do the same, and I've started looking into getting a restraining order. It's been a long, exhausting few months, and I'm just ready to move on with my life. But there's a part of me that still feels like she's not done, like she's waiting for the right moment to show up again, to try and pull me back into her chaotic world. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm taking precautions. I've got a security system installed in my apartment, and I'm keeping my distance from anyone who might be associated with her. I've even changed my daily routine a bit, just in case she's still watching. It's sad, really. I loved her once. I really did. But now I just want her to leave me alone. It's been about 6 months since I last saw or heard from A. Things have finally started to settle down. No more random appearances at my job, no more weird social media accounts popping up. I've even started dating someone new, and it's been different, in a good way. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still on edge sometimes. There are moments when I catch myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting her to be there. It's like a ghost I can't quite shake, even though I know she's not coming back. At least, I hope she's not. I've heard through the grapevine that she's moved on too, got a new job, maybe even a new boyfriend. I'm happy for her, in a way. I don't wish her any ill will, but I also know that I'm never going to reach out to her again. It's just too much baggage, too much history. Looking back, I can't believe how long I let this go on, how many red flags I ignored. I guess when you're in it, it's hard to see things clearly. You make excuses, you justify the bad behavior because you don't want to admit that you're in a toxic situation. But eventually, you have to face the truth. And the truth is, A was never going to change. Not for me, not for anyone. I'm just glad I finally had the strength to walk away. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, get out. Don't wait for things to get better, because they probably won't. Trust your instincts, and don't let anyone make you feel like you're the problem. You deserve better. I fell for a scam call and screwed up. Last night was supposed to be a regular shift. I work as a night auditor at this mid-tier hotel. You know, nothing fancy, but it pays the bills. I'm used to handling late-night calls, guests asking for Wi-Fi passwords, managers telling me to fix something. But this one was different. It was around 1 a.m. when the phone rang. I remember hesitating for a second because, let's be real, who calls at that time for anything legit? But I picked it up. Hey, I need help recalibrating the pin pad system. Got told this was the best time since it's quiet, the guy on the other end said. I was immediately skeptical. My first instinct was to hang up or give him some fake name. But then he said something that threw me off. I spoke with your GM earlier, and he mentioned you'd be the one to help. He knew my general manager's name. That's when I paused. I thought, maybe this is legit. I mean, how would he know the GM's name otherwise? It's not exactly public info, and I hadn't heard of any scams involving recalibration of pin pad systems before. The guy's voice was calm, almost too calm, like he's been through this 100 times. He even laughed at one point, saying, "You're the first person who hasn't yelled at me or hung up." I hate to admit it, but that actually made me feel a bit bad for him. Stupid me, I went along with it. So there I was, alone in the dimly lit office, following his instructions. I didn't install anything on the computer or anything like that. He walked me through what I thought was recalibrating the system. I was tapping away at the pin pad, feeling like a complete idiot because, honestly, I didn't even know what half of it meant. I kept thinking, this is too complicated for a scam. Who puts this much effort into stealing from a small hotel? It didn't make sense. And then the guy says, "All right, now input the number 6000. He made it sound like some kind of code, like part of the recalibration process. I hesitated, but he reassured me, "It's just to reset the system." Looking back now, I feel like the biggest idiot. I typed it in. Little did I know, I had just authorized a refund for $6,000. The next morning, everything came crashing down. The GM pulled me aside as soon as I clocked out. He wasn't yelling, but I could feel the disappointment radiating off him. "OP, I need you to come into my office." I thought it was just about some routine check or a small mistake, maybe someone complaining about the Wi-Fi again. Nope. He sits me down, shows me the transaction logs, and there it was. $6,000 refunded straight out of our system in the middle of the night. "Do you know anything about this?" he asked, and my heart stopped. I didn't say anything for a few seconds, and then it all clicked. I screwed up. I screwed up big time. I tried explaining what happened, but the GM wasn't buying it. "You didn't think to double-check? No verification? Nothing?" His voice stayed calm, which somehow made it worse. I wish he had yelled at me, thrown something, fired me on the spot. But no, he just kept his cool, like he expected this from me. I explained how the guy had known his name, how convincing it all seemed. But the GM just shook his head. "Scammers are good at this, OP. They know how to get inside your head, but you still should have known better." I left the office feeling like absolute garbage. I couldn't believe I'd fallen for it. I mean, I'm not stupid, right? I've always had this massive distrust for older men because of some stuff that happened when I was younger, and somehow this guy still got to me. He didn't even need to try that hard. That's what burns the most. Thankfully, I didn't get fired. I think the GM knew how bad I felt, how shaken I was. But man, the look in his eyes, it was like he lost all faith in me. And you know what? I don't blame him. I'd lost faith in myself. I went home that morning and just sat on the couch, staring at the wall. $6,000. Gone. just like that. I couldn't even explain it to my mom when she called later. She could tell something was off, kept asking what was wrong. But how do you tell someone you're this much of a screw-up? I felt like the world's biggest idiot. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about the fact that I let someone play me like a puppet. I've always been the type to overthink, to second-guess everyone's intentions, and yet here I was, falling for a scam that should have been obvious from the start. The worst part? I still can't get that guy's voice out of my head. Calm, friendly, like we were just two people trying to get through a tough night together. He probably laughed his ass off after he hung up. Update. It's been a week since everything went down, and I still haven't fully processed it. My GM is treating me like nothing happened, which is almost worse than if he were angry. I've been double-checking every single thing I do at work now, paranoid that I'll mess up again. The other night, I had a call come through at 2 a.m. For a second, I froze, thinking it might be another scam. But no, it was just some drunk guest asking for an extra towel. Still, my heart was racing. I feel like I'm constantly on edge now. I can't stop replaying the conversation in my head. How could I have been so dumb? I've always prided myself on being cautious, on not trusting people easily, and yet this guy managed to break through all that. It makes me question everything about myself. Today, my mom called again. I think she knew something was still off, so I finally told her. The whole story, start to finish. I expected her to scold me, to tell me how stupid I was for falling for a scam, but instead, she just listened. When I finished, she sighed. You're not dumb, OP. You're human. Scammers are professionals at this. They know exactly how to manipulate people, and they've done it to smarter folks than you. It didn't make me feel much better, but hearing it from her helped, I guess. At least someone doesn't think I'm a total idiot. So, it's been about a month now. Things have gone back to normal at work, but I'm not the same. Every time the phone rings during my shift, I get this knot in my stomach. I'm constantly second-guessing everything, which isn't great for my job, but I'm learning to live with it. My GM told me last week that the hotel managed to recoup most of the money through insurance, so that's a relief. I still feel guilty, but at least the financial damage wasn't as bad as it could have been. I don't know if I'll ever fully get over it. That feeling of being duped, of letting someone take advantage of me. It's something that sticks with you, but I'm trying. That's all I can do. People think I'm a hero, but really I'm just stupid. Look, this story isn't the kind of heroic tale people make it out to be. If anything, it's a series of dumb, coincidental events. About 2 years ago, I saved my partner from getting hit by a drunk driver, but not in the way people think. We were leaving a bar, both drunk, stumbling like idiots. My head was foggy as hell, and I wasn't paying attention to anything around me. We were laughing, like we usually do after a few beers, walking down this street that's always too dark and sketchy at night. Out of nowhere, I trip on this damn manhole cover that's sticking up. I didn't see it, obviously, because again, drunk. But I trip forward with my arms flailing and somehow manage to push my partner, let's call them P, out of the way. The next thing I know, there's this blinding flash of headlights. I barely register what's happening before the car smashes into me. I don't remember much after that except pain and my body crumpling to the pavement. Everything else is fuzzy, probably a mix of adrenaline and alcohol. P's screaming my name, and I'm lying there, half conscious, with the car's tire inches from my head. The driver was this wasted guy who looked more confused than sorry. Dude didn't even get out of the car. He just sat there staring at me like I was some kind of roach he accidentally squashed. Next thing I know, P's hovering over me, crying, while I'm just trying not to pass out. People start gathering around. Someone's on the phone with 911, and I'm lying there thinking, what the actual fuck just happened? But everyone's acting like I did something heroic. P's telling everyone how I saved them by pushing them out of the way. Truth is, it was a total accident. I tripped. I didn't save anyone intentionally. I was too wasted to think about anything other than keeping my balance. Waking up in the hospital was a mess. My body was jacked up, broken ribs, busted leg, the whole works. But the worst part? I couldn't really process what had happened. Everything felt distant, like it wasn't even real. P came to see me every day, telling me how I saved their life, how I was their hero. They kept saying that moment was when they really fell in love with me. I didn't know what to say. I felt like a fraud, honestly. How the hell do you respond to that when you know it wasn't on purpose? I mean, yeah, I pushed them out of the way, but not because I was trying to be some knight in shining armor. I was a drunk idiot who fell at the right time. Every time they called me cute or held my hand, I felt this knot in my stomach. I wasn't a hero. I didn't want to be this symbol they kept building me up to be. But at the same time, I didn't want to burst their bubble, you know? P was so happy, so in love, and I didn't want to ruin that. So, I just kept quiet, nodded, let them believe what they wanted. But inside, it was eating me alive. It got worse when I was finally discharged. Everyone treated me like I was some kind of saint. Even my parents were gushing about how brave I was. My friends started calling me Captain Save a Life, and it was all just too much. They had no idea what really happened. I couldn't stand it. I started avoiding P for a while. I couldn't handle the way they looked at me, all starry-eyed, like I'd done something incredible. Every time I saw them, I felt like I was lying just by being there. It didn't help that I was in and out of therapy for my injuries. Physical and, well, the mental shit was starting to pile up too. P started noticing that I was pulling away. They'd ask if something was wrong, but I'd just brush it off. I didn't want to hurt them, you know? How do you tell someone that the thing they've been idolizing you for is based on nothing but dumb luck? I couldn't stand the idea of breaking their heart. But it was breaking me, keeping it all inside. I started drinking more, which probably wasn't the best idea considering how things went down in the first place. But it's hard to care about the right decisions when you're drowning in guilt. One night we were sitting at dinner, and P was talking about the accident again, about how grateful they were, how much it changed their life. I couldn't take it anymore. The words just came out before I could stop them. I didn't save you on purpose. P stopped mid-sentence, fork halfway to their mouth, and stared at me like I'd just grown a second head. What? I wasn't trying to save you. I tripped, and you happened to be in the way. That's it. It wasn't some heroic act. It was an accident. I'll never forget the look on their face. It was like I'd shattered this perfect little world they'd built in their head. They didn't say anything for a long time, just sat there, staring at me. I wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. Finally, they stood up, pushed their plate away, and walked out of the room. I didn't follow them. I just sat there, staring at my food, feeling like the biggest piece of shit on the planet. Things were weird after that. We didn't talk about it for days. I wasn't sure if they hated me or if they were just processing everything. But the silence was unbearable. One night, P finally broke the ice. They sat down next to me, not saying anything at first. Then, after what felt like an eternity, they said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I didn't have a good answer. I mumbled something about not wanting to ruin their view of me, but even that sounded lame in my own ears. They shook their head, got up, and went to bed without another word. The next few weeks were rough. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was tense, awkward. I could feel them pulling away, and I couldn't blame them. I'd built up this lie by staying quiet for so long, and now it was crumbling around me. Eventually, they told me they needed some space. They didn't know how to feel about everything, and honestly, neither did I. They moved out for a while, saying they needed time to think. I get it. I probably would have done the same if I were in their shoes. Update. So, it's been about 6 months since I last posted. Things haven't exactly gotten better. P and I are still separated. They say they need more time to figure out how they feel, and I'm giving them that. But it's hard. I miss them. I miss how things were before all this. But I know I can't undo what's been done. I try not to blame myself, but it's hard not to. I should have just kept my mouth shut. I shouldn't have told them the truth. They were happy believing I was their hero, and now I've ruined that. I don't know if we'll ever get back together. Part of me thinks they'll never be able to look at me the same way again, and I get that. But it doesn't make it any easier to deal with. I guess the moral of this story is, don't be a dumbass like me. Sometimes it's better to just let people believe what they want, especially if it makes them happy. I don't know if I'll ever get another chance with P, but for now, I'm just trying to live with the consequences of my actions. P and I are officially done. They moved on, found someone else, and I can't even be mad about it. They deserve to be with someone who doesn't have a mess of guilt and confusion hanging over their head. I'm still trying to figure things out for myself. I've started seeing a therapist. Yeah, I know, typical fix-yourself move. But it's helping. I'm not drinking as much, which is probably a good thing considering how all this started. I'll always love P, but I think I've finally accepted that we're not meant to be. Sometimes things just don't work out, no matter how much you want them to. And that's okay. Life moves on. You just have to move with it.